Okay, boys and girls, the Native Americans. We're going to explore some of the things that they are famous for. Okay, so the Americas developed in isolation from the rest of the planet and built a breathtaking world unlike anything else in our planet's history, alongside the living legacy of the millions of Native American people who still call this land home. A fascinating way to connect with this incredible saga is through the stunning objects created by the Native Americans over the last 15,000 years. So they are thousands of miles apart, but there's powerful connections that have stretched with these cultures. So we're going to take a look at some of this. It's dated back to 1000 AD. Okay, so we have these pots, Chaco pots or Chaco Caco pots. Okay, their crystallized clay pots are in shape similar to the Maya, but these are from New Mexico. They're dated from 1000 to 1300 BC. So, they're for drinking chocolate is an ancient tradition for Mexican and Central American people. But chocolate doesn't grow in the American Southwest. So the archaeologists were stunned to discover the remains of chocolate drink inside these beautiful clay jars. So imagine they've sat in there all those years. We now know that Southwest people were intimately connected with the Mesoamerica, even creating chocolate pots shaped like these, used by ancient Maya thousands of miles away. And the story doesn't stop there. Caco is not native to Middle America. The first evidence of its use comes from South America, Amazon, at least 5,000 years ago. Though these pots, a story emerges of traditions across thousands of miles and thousands a year to resonate across America. Okay, so maize and growing. Through the last 15,000 years, Native American cultures have ranged from small nomadic tribes. These tribes are going to be the ones that we learn about that will have settled in Missouri. Okay, there's empires of millions of Native Americans now, but for the most part, their communities, past and present, one plant stands apart as central to the indigenous ways of life. Corn, also known as maize, hailed today as the world's most important food crop. Corn had already been spread across nearly all the Americans by the time of European contact. Native people innovated ways to grow it in some ways of the driest deserts, highest peaks, and wettest jungles in the world. From the Haudenosaunee seed keeper planning next year's harvest in upstate New York to the Inca noble giving out corn beer to his loyal subjects to the Olmec chief preparing to embody the maize god, the story of this plant is different in each part of the continents, but the incredible objects used to celebrate maize make it clear that this crop was virtually important across all of America. Across the eastern United States and Canada, there are over 10,000 sacred mounds. Of Choctaw traditions link their mounds with their ancestors' corn and the sky.
Oyo natubbi ashimayosh. Nani chaha ohigiyahum. Awata tuglukat afamatto. Hokchapo ihmiyash makachito. Akankapaya hoyo ma habina jitto. Enkana tuka imatubba chinkat emissado. Digma chipkosi ittin talaka. Hoyo shutik pitta kaniyado. Nani chaha apaknama. Tanchi hulukchi hayakat ashatto. Ahoyo hosh tanchi hapimatok mea.
Okay, so what you just heard is the Native American tongue. So they were offering a sacrifice for the corn. So if you want to see the story, it had the words that you can go back and rewatch it and listen to the tongue. Okay, now this is the idol of the corn goddess. So that's who they were making the sacrifice to. Modern Nahu people living in central Mexico have a saying, "Corn is my blood," and this sentiment is more than metaphor. Many have eaten maize dishes every day of their lives and believe full-heartedly that this relationship with food is crucial to their well-being. It is a tradition that goes back thousands of years, perhaps even to initial domestication of this crop from a central Mexican weed known as tisonite. A deep connection to maize corn can be seen in the gods in Mesoamerica. For the ancient Olmec and Maya, the god of maize was one of their most central deities. Okay, this is a water jar, a Zuni water jar. Okay, maize arrived in the American Southwest thousands of years after its initial domestication in Mesoamerica, but for once it was revolutionized in the region. So, the steady food supplies of maize enabled new permanent settlements built of stone and clay. Okay, but it was difficult in the Southwest to grow this maize, so to overcome this challenge, the Zuni innovated a water-efficient method called water gardens, which call for a gridwork of sunken beds to be hand-watered with clay jars. Today, this method is being revitalized to grow corn and the three sisters of maize, beans, and squash. So just like today with our farmers, how we put in the sprayers and we water our crops, the Native Americans made these jars to help water. Ceramic corn god bottle. Soon after maize was first domesticated in Mexico, native people brought it to South America. It grew to become one of the most important staple crops for cultures like the Inca and Mocha. But here, many indigenous people are more likely to drink than eat products made from maize. It is a primary ingredient in chica. A nutritious fermented corn drink has been a staple throughout the Andes for thousands of years. Okay, so we have some shell and water.
Marcus Hendricks makes wampum beads. He is a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag. The Haudenosaunee acquired wampum beads from his people and other Atlantic coastal communities.
Wampanoag means people of the first light, people of the dawn. They witnessed the first horizon of the sun coming up.
The first step to making wampum is gathering shellfish in his ancestral waters off Cape Cod.
When I come out onto the water, there's a connection to my ancestors, a relationship that goes through my blood and my veins.
The shells of quahog are the raw material for wampum.
You want to look for good thickness in a quahog.
The fire is both the first step in a gratitude offering and prepares the quahog to be opened.
I was taught really young to take the time to give thanks and say a few prayers to the Creator. We do that anytime we're harvesting anything from Mother Earth.
Marcus uses traditional methods to transform the shell into wampum beads, refining raw shell until it can be strung together into a wampum belt.
Each bead took a lot of hours and a lot of manpower. Each strand probably would have taken a year to make.
When strung into a belt, wampum empowers the person holding it as a representative of their people.
They were made for ceremonies to depict stories and treaties between tribes. So if I was to go visit another nation, I would bring the belt to show that there's a close bond between between the nations.
Okay, so then we have a shell-faced mask. For many Mississippian people, the sea may have seemed more legend than fact, and marine shell would evoke this storied place, while these precious objects were recognizably from water. Saltwater species would have been instantly understood as exotic. For people across the Americas, marine shell was something both unusual and familiar, a precious material that could be worked to evoke worlds beyond and bountiful sea. This tiny Mississippian mask is delicately carved from shells that originated from the Gulf of Mexico, but it was found in a cave in Sumner County, Tennessee, hundreds of miles from the sea. It is thought that masks like these evoke the Native American culture hero, known in later periods as Red Horn, and were used as earrings in kinship ceremonies. Shell carvings of the Maya man. Among the ancient Maya artworks were created in every medium, from stone and bone to ceramic and paper, but in many cases, finely worked marine shell representations are their most precious works. Some served as musical instruments, others were used as ornaments and works of art, and today many are hailed as some of the most incredible objects known from Native America. This delicate shell carving is from the classic Maya city known as Panik, located hundreds of miles from the sea. The figure was once inlaid with dozens of precious stones, but now only a single pearl remains, representing an elaborate air skull. The man sits on a throne, which, along with his elaborate feather headdress, implies he is a member of Palaku's esteemed royal family. It dates back to the 800 AD. Skeleton head shell. For the Taino people of the Caribbean islands, the ocean was a source of life and death. Alongside agriculture, the sea was a major source of food and raw materials for the Taino, whose thriving population grew into the millions. But the sea also brought the darkest chapter of their history, a tide of European conquistors. The Taino was the first Native American people to encounter Columbus and Spanish, and under their oppressive rule, Taino communities and their way of life were nearly totally destroyed. This carved shell pendant depicts a man with a skeleton head, likely an ancestor. The Taino venerated their deceased loved ones, often even keeping bones of esteemed relatives in baskets in their dwellings. Okay, this triple-headed water bottle for the Mississippian mound building cultures of North America. So this is one that's in Missouri. Almost every major center was built near floodplains and major rivers. The waterways served as the lifeblood to support food, agriculture, and sustain these cities. But they were also a means of transportation for the complex social networks that unified centers from the Great Lakes all the way down to what is today Georgia and Alabama. This connectivity fueled incredible art and commerce across the Mississippian world. One of the most stunning examples in this triple-headed clay water bottle, dated to between 1350 to 1550 AD. It was excavated around 1833 at the Chestnut Mound on the Cumberland River in Tennessee. Jane Myers and Simon Prowse are on the trail of affairs of Native American people that dominated the American Southwest for centuries and used this gorge to elude capture. They are also people known as the Comanche.
Today, the image of Indians on horseback is iconic. But Native Americans never set eyes on a horse before the 15th century, when Europeans bring them to America as a weapon of conquest. The Comanche and other native peoples adapt the horse as a powerful ally in the fight to protect their land and way of life.
Tekana babun sita nama tukuma. Mavat nama naikat tiasa nama sokovi iyaikat Yavai nana sama naha.
This rock art tells a story. This is commemorating an event, a very successful horse raid.
We're looking at possibly the beginning of our empire as Comanche people on horseback. It's just amazing.
The panel is just one of hundreds found in this gorge, created by Jane's ancestors. These images in Comanche oral history are rewriting the story of Native America in the wake of European colonialism.
We're seeing the first encounter between the Spanish here, the Comanche, and the horse.
The rock art may memorialize a pivotal moment in history, a battle in which the Comanche seized the horse.
Nama apa upu nama wakatu takai. Sumit nana tehoiti tekap nama na nama ni haniku. Nare yaku navitaku wohomiai. Apa taven sonipka suakat. Surita tehoya sonip atetsi sa nesukat. Tanetsa tehoya maai tave terete.
To the Comanche, the horse is a gift from the Creator.
Tamata tenana tejai mahimiatsi piasa wumnatsi. Sura exapana nama tehuya nama namanai supanai. Soti nama tehuya himaina tehuya oyoko uri kutkui. Sita tea pehepi pahari. Piasama tinama tehuya wurtokwe.
After U.S. troops slaughter the Comanche herd, Quanah Parker, the last free Comanche chief, surrenders.
So I want people to see us and just think, oh my gosh, that person is Comanche. Those people, they're not historical. They're still alive today. Look, they're thriving.
And the spirit of the horse remains at the heart of the Comanche Nation. When the moon is full, the Comanche believe those Mustangs massacred in the Texas Panhandle still run free.
Ita sokovica nansuakai. Ita tehuya suapsa sa natsu. Sumet nana usuni numanaitoi. Usuni numanait.
Okay, then we have the wooden mask with human face and antlers. To be a shaman is at times to be both human and animal. From complex trances to incredible regala, these spiritual leaders would offer transcend the human world to contact another spiritual realm. This carved cedar mask with shell inlaid eyes represents a face that's recognizable as both human and animal. Then you have your raven mask. For indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, animal spirits are not just entities to be meditated with. They have their own incredible histories, ones that often influence and even supersede the human world, and there is perhaps no animal more central to the origin of the people. Today, the image of the Indian horseman is iconic, but until 500 years ago, the people of Native America had never seen a horse. These creatures were first brought by European invaders who hoped to use them as a tool of conquest, but they actually traded these horses. The bird bull. For Native people across America, the universe was understood as several parallels. People were most often in the land around us. Some animals could transcend these boundaries. One of the most famed of these creatures was the thunderbird, a supernatural being that could travel between the worlds and even control light.